Let's go on a short journey today to check out some of the options available on your next Western Caribbean cruise. Ahoy travelers, it's Amy here to help you make your travel experience a success. Earlier this year, we sailed on the Carnival Jubilee to the Western Caribbean. Now, I will say that this cruise was more about the ship for us than the destination, since we have been to these ports of call several times. However, we still booked a couple of new to us excursions. So stay tuned to find out what we did and what we thought about it. While we ended our port stops in Cozumel, I'm going to begin there because no one said I had to go in chronological order. If you're heading out on a Western Caribbean cruise, the odds are that you will stop at Cozumel. It's the very high odds. Everyone I've ever been on has stopped there. Normally we choose to make this a beach day and head off to one of Cozumel's many beach clubs. Our favorite, Natchi Kokum. And that's due to its exclusivity and relaxing non-party atmosphere. However, for this trip, we decided to forego booking anything in Cozumel and just wing it. We've done this before and ended up at a great ocean view restaurant and even had some inexpensive but good massages. We discussed not even getting off the ship, but since this was going to be our last time in Cozumel for the foreseeable future, we don't have any Western Caribbean cruises on the books, we decided to at least get off and walk the terminal area. A lot of people never make it past the bars and restaurants right near the pier, so we were in good company, or maybe not, maybe drunk company, I don't know. Well, we didn't do much more than walk around and browse a few shops, didn't even spend a peso. I'm glad we did get off the ship for an hour or so. If you'd like to know more about Cozumel beach clubs, I do have a video on some of the more popular ones that I will link in the description below. Costa Maya is one of those places where we really had never booked anything before, so I ended up booking us a beach day at a private beach club, which is why we chose to not go to Natchi Kokum and Cozumel on this last trip. One beach day is enough for me. I found this excursion through TripAdvisor, and it was through a tour company called Coral Go. I would love to tell you the name of the beach, but I'll just put it on the screen because even after hearing it pronounced a few times, I still can't pronounce it. It was a reasonable cost for an all-inclusive beach trip. Taxi, food, drinks, and Wi-Fi, all for $79 per person. Taxis usually aren't included in these, so that was an extra bump. For anyone who's had to meet up with an excursion not booked through the cruise line at Costa Maya, you'll know that finding your way out of that terminal area and to where you meet the tours can be tricky. And for me, a little stressful. They have built up that terminal to be its own destination, so it is large and it's not the easiest one to find your way out of. When you do make it past all the shops and into the parking area, you still haven't gone far enough. And no matter how well the excursion company tries to explain the directions, it's never good enough, not in my opinion anyway. So let me tell you what you need to do. When you get off the ship, keep walking. Just keep walking and walking. And eventually, as long as you don't get turned around, you're going to find yourself in the bus parking. This is where all the tour buses will park. Now, while our directions told us to meet by the Mayan Pyramid, the problem is you can't see the Mayan Pyramid until you get out of the terminal altogether. It's not a real pyramid anyway, it's just a large replica. You're going to need to go past the guard station and walk towards town. And it just doesn't seem like this is what you're supposed to do. It seems like you shouldn't be going that direction. There's guards there. It's hard to see. You can't tell that you're walking towards town, so it can be confusing. From the guard station into town, it's an easy walk. It's not going to be long before you see that pyramid. And the reason for all of this walking is because the private excursion companies are not allowed past the guard station and into the terminal area to pick up cruisers unless they pay for the privilege to do that. So that's pretty standard for cruise terminals, and it's just that at Costa Maya, the terminal is so big that you feel like you've gone too far before you even get out of the terminal area itself. Well, once we finally found our ride, we hopped in for what we were told was a 20-minute ride to the beach, but I'm pretty sure it was closer to 30. And let me tell you that we went out into the middle of nowhere. We drove and drove along the straight stretch of road without seeing hardly another car or building for miles and miles. This guy could have been taking us out to the middle of nowhere for us to never be seen again. Thankfully, it was just that the beach we were headed to was really out of the way. This was a new beach resort that appeared to be family run. We passed some sketchy places on the way there, so I was a little concerned, and once we got there, it sure wasn't as built up and as nice as what we're used to, like when we go to Nachikokum. But the food was great. The drinks were plenty strong enough. They kept coming as long as we wanted them, and the service was excellent. Since what we cared about most was a quiet, relaxing day at the beach, it worked out just fine for us. I think it would be great if they could get enough business to build and expand some, since the location is very beautiful. It's a very private, unlike the beach clubs along Cozumel shores, where they really are just kind of stacked up along the beach one right after another. If you're heading to Costa Maya and would like a relaxing beach day, I do recommend this spot, as long as you're okay with eating off of plastic chairs and tables and dogs. When we were there were some friendly dogs that liked to beg for food. They weren't a nuisance though. They just would curl up next to you if you had any food, waiting to see if you'd give them some, which of course I did. All in all, it was a lovely and peaceful day. Probably our favorite experience on this trip was part of our Roatan excursion. Now that's coming up next, but before we get to it, if you enjoy this video and maybe even learn something, consider subscribing with the notification bell on so that you don't miss out on any future posts. We have been to the port of Roatan several times and have had great success booking private tours with Roatan Henry Tours through shoreexcursioneer.com. Since we had done the same tour the last 2 trips, sloths, monkeys, chocolate, rum factory, with an island tour, we decided to switch it up. One thing I really wanted to do was to go out on one of the glass bottom boats to the reef. Neither Mom or I are up for snorkeling. I had a really bad experience on a snorkel excursion on my very first cruise, so unless I'm just walking out from the beach with a snorkel mask in my hand, it's not happening. I found an island tour on Shore Excursioneer that went to all the same places we had been to before, but added in that glass bottom boat. So we decided to book that. If I had to do it over again, I would have booked directly with Roatan Henry Tours and then asked them to add in the boat, which I know they would have done. They are super flexible when you book a private island tour with them. However, you never know if you're missing out on something better if you're always going to stick with what you know. So we tried something new. This excursion ended up being with Roatan Adventure Tours. It was okay, but the place we were taken to see sloths and monkeys, the Jungle Top Animal Park, was definitely not a place I was comfortable visiting. There was no way to know where they were taking us when we booked, and while this place did have a greater variety of animals and birds compared to Banawaki Park, where we have been before and we like, it was crowded. There was no real way to get good photos with any of the birds or animals because there were just so many people there. And it just didn't seem like this was a rescue operation, but a tourist trap. The whole place just made me feel uncomfortable. Then our driver went missing and wasn't where he said he would be waiting. So after we waited around for a while for him to show up, I finally went and searched for him so we could get out of there. He was a nice guy and we didn't have any other issues, but that really was a little bit of annoying, especially since it was raining at the time. Our next stop was the glass bottom boat, which was more of a half submarine. We had to walk down into a hold in the bottom of the boat that allowed us to sit and view through windows on either side of us. It was actually better than I had imagined. I just thought it would literally be a boat that had a glass bottom. If you have mobility issues, they definitely accommodate because we watched them carry a woman down into the hold that was in a wheelchair due to only having one leg. It was impressive because you had to go down a metal ladder to get into this viewing area. Now, I would love to tell you specifically which company this was, but I never saw anything written anywhere or any signs to give any indication what the boat company was called. It was super interesting to go out and see the reef up close without having to get wet or need to snorkel or scuba dive, which, ironically, I actually do have my license to do, but I haven't done it in 20 years, and that was in a lake. If you do go out and book an excursion that includes a boat like this, I recommend bringing a jacket. It was cold in that bottom, and we were there at the end of January, and it was a rainy day, but they had the AC going because I'm sure that it can get hot and stuffy down there, so just be prepared. I had brought a light rain jacket, but wish I'd had something a little bit more substantial. Now, we finished our private tour with a stop at the rum factory, but we chose to skip the so-called chocolate factory since we'd been to two different ones, and it's less of a factory tour and more of a shop where they sell chocolate. We didn't spend a lot of time in Roatan since we had been there the last two cruises, and we were mostly interested in the reef part of the excursion. Have you ever experienced any of these adventures? If you've held sloths in Roatan, which park did you visit and what did you think about it? Let me know in the comments below. Now, if you want to know more about our past excursions to some of these ports, be sure to check out this playlist and then come back for more information designed to help you have an amazing cruise. Have a blessed week, everyone.